Hey guys, Oro here, and today I want to talk about my experience playing Elden Ring Nightreign. But before we start this review, I'd like to answer the question, why should I listen to this dumb nerd? Well, let me tell you a little about myself. I've been creating content for From Software games since 2009 when Demon Souls released. I also have a huge focus on the online aspects of these games. I've got about 10,000 hours across the Souls series, and about 2,000 in Elden Ring. I basically dedicate my whole life to these games, and Nightreign is no exception. However, there are some things I want to talk about, some things that were disappointing to me. So what is Nightreign? Nightreign is a third-person action RPG from developers From Software, the same developers of Elden Ring, you guessed it. It is a roguelike game, which means it has a massive focus on randomization and one life, but it also has permanent progression. So even if you die, you're getting some progress. This is an online multiplayer game with a focus on 3 players. However, you can play solo, although I wouldn't recommend it. More on that later. The typical gameplay loop is like this. You start out by inviting 2 other friends or matchmake with up to 2 other players. And of course, you can go solo if you want to as well. Then you decide on a Night Lord you'd like to fight. Night Lords are the major bosses in Nightreign, and you pick which one you want to hunt at the start of a run. At first, you only get to hunt the one Night Lord, but then the game opens up as soon as you defeat him. After queuing up, you get to select your character. There are 8 characters in Nightreign, each with their own unique abilities. When you load into a match, you'll spawn in Limveld, the map of Nightreign. Now, there is only one map, but it can vary quite a bit. Now, this game is split up into 3 days, with each day lasting around 20 minutes. At the end of each day, there's a storm, sort of like Fortnite, that surrounds you and pushes you to a certain location, and that's where you'll fight the day 1 and 2 bosses. You do not want to get caught in the storm because it does massive damage to your character, so you have to constantly be aware of the time of day and your surroundings. This makes deciding where to go a risk versus reward factor constantly, dodging the storm and trying to get things done in a timely manner. When day 1 starts, you land, you loot up, you kill enemies, gain runes, level up your character, and defeat the first day boss. Then you do the exact same thing on day 2, where you fight the second boss. And finally, day 3, you don't collect anything at all, you just go straight to the third and final boss, which is the Night Lord that you selected at the start of the run. At the end of your run, win or lose, you'll get relics. Now, you'll get better relics depending on how well you do, so if you beat the Night Lord, you'll get the best relics, and you'll get more of them. You'll also get currency called Merc, which you can use to gamba for better relics or buy skins. So that's the main gameplay loop of Nightreign. It is an incredibly addicting formula, and it's super fun. However, it has its issues. Now, before we dive into those issues, I want to talk about how this game actually plays. Everyone always asks me, what does this game play like? Well, it's literally Elden Ring. It is Elden Ring. If you played Elden Ring, it has Elden Ring weapons and Elden Ring enemies. They do an excellent job of putting almost every single Elden Ring enemy into this game randomly somehow, which is really cool. I do like that. But yes, at the end of the day, it's just Elden Ring. If you played Elden Ring, you're going to feel right at home. However, there are some key differences between Elden Ring and Nightreign. One huge difference is that they add a super sprint ability, which allows you to run at torrent speeds on a dime. All you do is click in the left stick and you just super sprint across the map. It's super helpful for obviously, traversing this massive map they give you. And it's good even in combat. It takes a bit of stamina though, so you have to be careful using it. On top of super sprinting, they also added double jumping off walls and mantling from Sekiro. This allows you to traverse the world even easier. Now, admittedly, some walls can be extremely finicky with this, and you'll find yourself jumping at them for quite a while until your character actually mantles up. Here's hoping they make it a little easier, because jumping is the ultimate final boss of this game, and I'm sort of not joking. Another big change are the abilities you can use. Each character gets a passive ability, a character skill, and an ultimate art. The passives are just that, passive abilities that you don't have to worry about. Your character skill is your main ability that you can use on a very short cooldown in almost every situation. And your ultimate art is something you have to charge up over time, but has a massive impact. So something cool about this game is when you do die, you go down, but you can get revived by your teammates attacking you on the ground. Now, this seems a little weird at first, but it feels really good and it keeps up the pace of the game. It makes perfect sense. You're able to actually attack enemies and revive your teammates at the same time. And depending on the damage you do, you revive your teammates quicker. Now, if your bar goes out and you do bleed out and die, you'll lose a level, but you'll be able to go back and get your runes. So it is very punishing if you die. Always stick with your teammates and make sure to revive them as quickly as possible. Each day 2 boss is souped up, meaning that they might be familiar to you in Elden Ring, but they have brand new movesets and attacks that might catch you off guard. This game also features a few returning bosses from the Dark Souls series, but I'll talk more about that later. Nightreign is a difficult game. The difficulty is one thing that shocked me about this game, because going into it, I thought, okay, there's 3 players. You know, you see 3 players in Elden Ring, they just unlock and bully everything to death. And in some runs, that is the case, and I'll expand on that later, but most average runs is going to be insanely difficult. This is a hard game. From, you know, just playing Elden Ring to the Night Lords themselves, they demand a certain level of teamwork and skill, for that matter. The game is hard, and I like that. I think that's fantastic. I was not expecting it, and I really, really enjoy it. Getting through the Night Lords and that struggle is the classic feeling of, oh my god, yes, finally we did it. The struggle is part of the game. And in this game, overcoming huge challenges is just as rewarding as it is in Elden Ring. So do not expect a cakewalk. I think the difficulty is going to surprise a lot of players. Now that about sums up the gameplay. Now let's talk about the music. If you know anything about From Software, you know they nail the music every single time, and Nightreign is no exception. The soundtrack of this game is incredible. It completely blew me away. There's not really too much to say on this. They nailed it. It's perfect. The graphics are just like Elden Ring, except slightly improved, which is to say really, really good. No complaints there at all. And finally, the game's performance ran incredibly well on the PC version. I can't speak for the console versions, but PC version runs at a steady 60 FPS. And yes, unfortunately, it's locked to 60, but it really does a good job. Now that we've got the basics out of the way, let's talk a little more specifics. So the first thing I want to talk about is the online play. The netcode for this game has been drastically improved. If you've ever played Elden Ring co-op, you know things can get a little finicky. Sometimes stuff will desync, it won't exactly line up with your friend's screen, a boss will attack, and then they won't attack on your screen, and then, whoa, they'll super hit you in like half a second, their animation won't exactly play out. This has been completely fixed in Nightreign. They have taken their time and really, really polished the netcode, and it shows. It is incredible. Everything syncs. Everything's perfect. It feels like no matter what, you're playing your own single-player game with friends, and that's how it should feel. So props to From Software finally nailing the netcode. They've done an excellent job in this game. Now, in the middle of a Nightreign match, if you disconnect, you're actually able to reconnect if you get back into the game, which is a really cool feature. So again, this game can be played as a trio or solo. Let me expand on what I said about solo play earlier. Solo in this game is hard. Really, really hard. Now, personally, I really like that solos are extremely difficult, but this is something you have to know going into this game, is that solo is not going to be super chill and pleasant like trios. It is a challenge. It is not something you do normally. I would only recommend this to someone who does like challenge runs, like level 1 challenge runs, like when you're really, really, really good at the PvE of Elden Ring. Aside from that, I really cannot whole heart recommend this at all. It is simply too difficult and not balanced really at all. Now, they tried to balance the game for solos. The enemies do have reduced health, and they are definitely easier to take out, but there's still the same amount of them, and there's only one of you. And if you die, no one's there to res you. Now let's talk about one of my favorite parts about this game, the characters. Each character is super unique and fun to play. Again, each character has different passives, skills, and ultimates, but they also have unique movesets depending on which weapon you use. So for Wilder, his greatsword has a totally unique moveset. So if you use any greatsword on Wilder, you're going to get this sort of upgraded moveset. Executor has a different katana moveset. Iron Eye has a faster and smoother bow moveset, etc., etc. These characters also have different scalings with their stats. So the Guardian, for example, has an S scaling in Vigor, which is the health stat, so he's super tanky. Other characters like Recluse have a D scaling in Vigor, but Recluse also has an S in Faith and Int, which makes her incredibly powerful using magic from ranged. They did an excellent job making each character feel completely unique and fun to play. Wilder plays like John Elden Ring. If you play Elden Ring, if you pick Wilder, he's always a safe bet. He is just, you know, the dude. He's got normal Elden Ring rolls. He's got a decent health bar. He does melee stuff. He's great. Now, Guardian plays more of a tank role with his great shield. He's able to super block with his passive and stay on the front lines to protect your teammates. Iron Eye is incredibly strong with bows with his unique bow moveset, which allows him to slowly pelt down enemies from afar and stay safe while still doing consistent damage. Duchess is extremely powerful with bursty abilities like Frost and Bleed because of her rewind ability, and she also is incredibly nimble with her double dodges. Raider's your typical strength build, Unga Bunga, you just sort of ignore mechanics, stack poise, hold R2, jump attack, it's fantastic. Revenant summons her dead family to do everything for her, which is really cool. She's sort of a necromancer playstyle. Recluse is insanely complex and super hard to play, but once you learn her, she's the most rewarding of all the characters. And Executor is here for those who played too much Sekiro. You can deflect literally everything with his Curse Blade. It's really cool. This is something that From Software really hasn't done before, is enable all these incredible playstyles in one game. And they just absolutely nailed it with the characters. Not only with their gameplay, but their designs. They're also likable and charming and just cool. And on that note, I'd like to talk about the lore in Nightreign. So a lot of the lore of Nightreign is told through the traditional means of reading item descriptions. However, there's this new mechanic called character remembrances, and these give insight into each character's backstory and why they arrived at the Round Table Hold. Each time you defeat a Night Lord of the character, you'll get another journal entry for them. And eventually you'll be able to relive remembrances, which are short story segments which allow you to talk to the characters and get some more backstory on them. I found these to be one of the most enjoyable parts of the game. Not only is the voice acting incredible as you'd expect from FromSoft game, but the storytelling is top-notch, and it really makes you care about these characters that you're playing and brings this world of Nightreign to life. It's really, really cool, and probably one of my favorite parts of the game. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the character skins. Now, this might be silly to a lot of you, but to me, the skins are sort of a big deal. They're really the only form of player expression in this game, but they are exceptionally high quality. Now, this next part might be hard to believe, but you actually unlock these skins by just playing the game. No real money, no microtransactions. They're just in the game. It's really sad that I have to make a point of this in 2025, but here we are. To me, this is a big deal because it really fights the precedent of microtransactions and battle passes for absolutely everything. And thank God this game doesn't have any of that junk. You're getting an entirely full game here. But yes, they are very, very cool. And you get even cooler skins after you beat the game. I'm not going to spoil them, but they are extremely fan servicey. If you like Dark Souls, you are probably going to freak out. So look forward to that. Now let's talk about the big bads of Nightreign, the Night Lords. There are 8 Night Lords total. Each Night Lord has a small pool that it picks from to decide the day 1 and 2 bosses. For example, if you pick a certain Night Lord, you'll only get 1 out of 3 bosses for day 1 and 1 out of 3 bosses for day 2. It'll always be one of these 3 bosses depending on the Night Lord you choose. And of course, the Night Lord is always the Night Lord that you pick. Each one of them is extremely memorable and super fun to fight. They did an absolutely incredible job creating them and designing their movesets. Some of these bosses need to be tackled in a certain way to take them down. You can't just throw your head at the boss and play Elden Ring and just expect to win. No, some of these you have to split up aggro. One person has to be on the other boss so you guys don't get hit in the back and cleaved by the other boss. You guys have to split up sometimes. It's just the whole game is clearly balanced around 3 players coordinating and working together, and it really shows with these Night Lords. These fights have been some of the most fun fights in all of From Software history, and I really was blown away by every single one of them. Now, each Night Lord has a weakness that you'll see before you select it. If you use this weakness against the Night Lord, they become significantly easier because they get micro-stunned and some of their abilities are even disabled before they can get them out. I actually have mixed feelings on this because I feel like if you actually pay attention to the weaknesses, some of the bosses that are otherwise an absolute nightmare become sort of a joke. It can get to the point where you can bully every single boss, even the final boss, if you pay attention to those weaknesses. And of course, get lucky with RNG and get what you need. But the quality of these fights, I really cannot stress enough how good they are. I've had some of the most clutch moments fighting these bosses, and each of them is pure cinema, as the kids would say nowadays. Especially that last boss. No spoilers, but holy crap. So I've talked about a lot of the things I like with the game, but there's a lot of stuff that I don't like about this game. Let's start by talking about the returning bosses. If you guys don't know, this game features returning bosses from the Dark Souls series. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the returning bosses. It's so cool. However, if you've watched the trailers, you've seen most of them. To my knowledge, there's only 6 returning bosses from Dark Souls, 2 from each Souls game. This is such a miss for me. Now, the bosses they did add are really, really cool. A lot of them have slightly updated movesets for the game to make them a little bit quicker to keep up with the Elden Ring bosses and the pace of the game. But aside from that, they are just as is. And they're just fun to fight. No complaints about them. It's just, I wish there were more. Like, they really fumbled this huge opportunity to add more. You know, this is the game that's non-canon that they're actually able to do this in, and they just decided not to, and that actually sucks. Another thing that really disappointed me about this game was the itemization in general. So in Nightreign, there's no equip load, so you can pick up as much as you want. Every single item in the game has a passive effect, and these effects make up your character build. Most of the passives you'll find on equipment are just more damage with a certain thing. You'll find more damage while two-handing, more damage while dual-wielding, more damage with jump attacks, etc., etc. So some of the best runs will be just stacking a certain damage type, like stacking range damage up the wazoo, but it doesn't make for an interesting run. It doesn't make for interesting itemization. It's just boring. More damage of a certain thing is, in my opinion, just not fun. I want more of the interesting itemizations, which they do have, but they're very few and far between. For example, there's one passive you can get that spawns glint blades periodically around you. I think that stuff's really cool, but that's like the only one. I have the same problem with the boons that you can acquire that upgrade your character. Most of them are just more damage when you bleed, more damage when you do this. They're just not fun. And again, there are some really, really cool ones like, you know, sprinting and you spawn an ice storm, or dodging and lightning bolts go down, but there's just so few and far between. I wish there was more of that. So to me, the itemization is a huge miss. On that same note, probably the worst thing about this game is the randomization. You probably won't notice this if you play this game casually. If you just go through the game and beat it once and never touch it again, this will probably not affect you. You'll probably have such a good time, and every run will be different. But if you play this game for any extended amount of time, past your first playthrough, past, I don't know, 20, 30 hours, you will begin to notice very, very obvious patterns in the game. Like I was saying earlier, the boss pools are set in stone. Every Night Lord you choose, you're only going to get 1 out of 3 every single time. You're not going to get all the other ones. You're only going to get this certain small pool of bosses, which seems really weird to me in a game like Elden Ring with 100+ bosses. Why don't they just make it completely random, like the randomizers that this game is sort of inspired by? Now, one cool part of the randomization are the events. There are certain events that completely change the map of Limveld. Now, each event is really cool because you can get some really cool stuff for doing them. I'm not going to spoil it. I'll let you figure out the secrets of the areas yourself, but just know that they're worth doing. But we're on the topic of randomization, which means that, yeah, it's a problem. They're not random. Everything inside of these areas is exactly the same every single time. So often you tackle them the same way. This makes for incredibly repetitive gameplay and sort of goes against being a roguelike. In a good roguelike, no 2 runs are exactly the same. And unfortunately for Elden Ring Nightreign, if you play for an extended period of time, those runs are going to look very similar very quickly. Again, this is one of those things that takes time to notice, and if you play this game normally and just do a playthrough of it and drop it and go play whatever else you're going to play, it's totally fine. This won't even affect you because the game is random enough to where, yeah, your first 20, 30 hours, you're not going to notice this at all. But for someone like me who really likes to sink their teeth into these games, this is the biggest disappointment of all time. Like I said, as you continue playing more and more, you'll begin to recognize certain patterns. The mine to the south always has the same troll in it. The castle in the center always spawns one of 3 different enemy types. Stuff like that gets very repetitive and very predictable and doesn't make for fun, engaging gameplay, in my opinion. One of the worst things about this game is that a lot of the mechanics require prior knowledge. Let me explain. There's a certain mechanic in the rot biome that if you don't know it, you will simply die. On my first run with the rot forest biome, I decided not to go into it because, well, it's a rot forest. Why would I go into it? I avoided it like the plague that it is, and I was punished for it, immensely so. At the end of my day 2 40-minute run, I was pushed into the small circle inside of the rot biome, which, surprise, puts rot on you constantly. As I was running through, I discovered these trees that healed your rot. And I was like, oh, okay, well, surely there's going to be a tree in the circle that allowed me to heal the rot while I fight the boss. Surprise, no tree in the middle. I had to fight the day 2 boss while permanently being rotted. And you can guess how well that went. The prior knowledge I needed was to go into the swamp, find out the secret, and become immune to rot. Now, a lot of you will say maybe this is a skill issue on my part. I know this might be heresy to say, but I think that's bad design. FromSoft usually does a good job of keeping things fair and having you just sort of YOLO and do stuff, but in this experience, I felt like this happened more often than not, is that the prior knowledge would save me from, well, this total bullshit, if we're being honest. Another example is there's an event that appears that spawns bugs on top of you that drain your level if you get hit by them. And they can drain multiple levels, Solalant style. You can go straight to level 1. You can go from level 15 all the way to level 1 if you get hit by them enough. Now, there's a message that pops up telling you that you need to seek out this boss to get your levels back. But a lot of the time, the boss can be outside the circle, so you'll never be able to get your levels back. There really isn't any prior knowledge here that can save you. It's just sort of a fuck you moment. But obviously, knowing to dodge the flies when they appear is super important. You don't want to get hit by those ever. And the final example I can think of are boss mechanics for the Night Lords. A lot of them, you really have no idea what's happening until you experience them. They feel almost like an MMO raid, in which you sort of go in and don't know the mechanics and you're learning with friends, which is super fun. However, if you die to these mechanics that you don't understand, you can't just enter the boss fight again. You have to understand these are 40-minute plus runs. That means that you have to go 40 minutes, successfully complete day 1 and 2 bosses to even get a chance to fight the boss again and to learn what the hell just happened to me. Now, for me, honestly, I sort of love this MMO like learning experience of the bosses. However, it can be super, super punishing and it can waste a lot of your time if you don't know what you're doing. I think a lot of players are going to get extremely frustrated with these mechanics, especially the first time through. So personally, I am not a fan of this requiring prior knowledge thing. But for the Night Lord bosses, they're actually not too bad, especially if you have a competent group. Now, I want to talk about another huge disappointment for me personally, which is the relic system. Out of the 50 hours I played Nightreign, 10 of those hours are probably spent in the training mode, because I extensively tested every single relic I could get my hands on, because of course I did. The problem with the relic system is that most of the relics are garbage. Their boosts are so minuscule that they actually don't matter at all. For example, a +3 int relic with the Moon Veil on Duchess only increased my damage by 5 points. That is completely pathetic. However, there are some relics that are completely broken. For example, flasks also heal allies is insane. Stamina recovery with each successful attack allows you to almost swing forever if you stack it. Partial HP restoration upon post damage literally lets you play Bloodborne while the others are playing Elden Ring. There's some really, really good ones, and those are cool. The main problem with this relic system is that you get the best relics by just playing through the game. Each Night Lord you defeat gives a unique relic that is usually just completely insane and better than everything you could possibly get from RNG. You can also get character relics through the Remembrances, which gives you unique bonus to their attacks and abilities. Also, just going through the game will slowly unlock set relics inside of the shop, which again are basically best in slot relics for each character. To me, this sort of defeats the whole purpose of having relics be the point of playing the game. I've gambled a lot and I've farmed for a lot of relics, and nothing comes close to these guaranteed relics you get by just doing your first playthrough. And to me, that's a little sad. The whole idea of this game to me was that you'd play it over and over and over and get like the perfect relics. And yes, you can get some insane relics. There are stuff that drops that's like, whoa, that is super strong. That is really good. But it's going to be like 1% better than these ones that you get guaranteed by just playing the game. So I have little to no desire to grind for these relics that I'm probably not going to see because I already have the best ones. On one hand, it's really nice because everybody's on the same playing field. You're going to get the best relics just by playing, and you won't have to rely on RNG for it. On the other hand, people who want to grind the game and continue playing after you beat it like me have nothing to grind for except skins. And the skins are really, really cool, like I talked about, but I was actually really excited for relics. I was really excited to make these character builds of specific stuff. And the variety is just not there. The strength of all of these things that I wish were stronger is just not there. And honestly, a lot of them are just not interesting enough, just like the itemization. And it's massive. This is probably the biggest disappointment for me, personally. Now, you can make some really cool niche builds with relics you find, but honestly, I don't think they're going to be as powerful as the ones I mentioned. All of these negative things boil down to one thing. Replayability. The replayability of this game is next to none. Yes, I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna have fun, but I wish it was just a little different. I wish it was just a little better. I think From Software doesn't know how to make a good roguelike, and that's a real shame because the game is so good in every other department. Like I said, my playthrough is an absolute joy. I had so much fun playing with friends, defeating the Night Lords for the first time, and just sort of going through it and struggling. In general, it was such an amazing experience. However, these tiny little things that bog down the game, the small amount of returning bosses, the itemization, the sort of the set in stone of the randomizations, the prior knowledge you need to survive some mechanics, the relic system in general, a lot of it is just extremely disappointing. And was not really what I was hoping for this game. So that being said, if you're going to play this game and just enjoy it for what it is and be done with it once you're done with the final Night Lord, this game is perfect. It is going to be a typical FromSoft experience, especially the friends. It's going to be elevated to an even more fun experience. It's going to be great. You're going to have such a good time. But if you're like me and you want to spend any extended amount of time playing this game, you're definitely going to be disappointed, as I am. I give Elden Ring Nightreign an 8 out of 10. This is still an incredible must-play From Software experience. The gameplay, the characters, the Night Lords themselves are completely unforgettable. The game itself is very fun. I just wish it lasted longer. I hope you guys enjoyed my review. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Elden Ring Nightreign. I'll be posting my very first playthrough and character guides soon to follow. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.